Hello, this is Henry Hunter, and today in this video I'll be showing you how to service your sensor. Now the work that's going to be conducted in this video relates purely to the applicator and the magnet. So you will not be able to rectify a sensor fault itself. So what you will need a rag, you'll need WD-40 or some other general purpose oil. You'll need a flathead screwdriver. You'll need a 2mm Allen key, a 1mm Allen key, and for you as an OGA, you should stock replacement magnets and a replacement magnet head would probably be your best bet. You don't necessarily need both, but it is easier to work with the magnet head than with the magnet itself. And then of course for the purpose of the video, we have a standard sensor and applicator. So this is the standard sensor that has been supplied with Portalevel units today. So you've got your side indicator, and it's made up of your applicator, retaining nut at the end, and a 1.5 meter cable with a BNC connector. So the first thing that you should do when you see a sensor is obviously you should carry out the dip test. So if you're watching this video, this is really when the sensor is performing well, but you see it's in bad condition. So the obvious signs of bad condition would be the magnet here. So often you'll find that is quite corroded. And then also if the customer hasn't been cleaning the equipment, then you'll notice there'll be debris in the inside and scum that's also creating corrosion on the inside. So now the best course of action, provided that the sensor is still operational but in poor condition, will be to strip down the sensor, clean it and replace any parts that need replacing, and then recheck it at the end. And this is what I'll be showing you in this video. So to dismantle the sensor, you need to unscrew the retaining nut on the back here, and then the sensor just simply slides out like that. So this is the main applicator assembly, and this is the sensor spring and assembly. Okay, so you don't need to, nothing will happen here because it's all just polymer, but you may notice that the spring is corroded. So you should apply some oil to the rag and then take off the rust. But make sure that you don't get too much WD-40 onto the polymer itself, just to reduce risk of expansion caused by the oil. So this is where your issues will be. Run a rag, through the sensor itself, and just rotate it a few times, and then repeat the same in the front, just to make sure you get everything out. Now, if the magnet is in very poor condition, you're going to need to replace the magnet head. And the way that you do this is you take your 2mm Allen key, and then you'll notice there's a little grub screw just below the top indicator here, and you just rotate it and it will simply come off like so. So now that we have the constituent parts being the main housing, the sensor head and the sensor spring and assembly. So now if this was a very corroded unit, I could replace it with this unit here, which is a replacement sensor head, which you should stock. Or you could also, this is a more high risk approach, and there's not one that I'd recommend, but there's one that we do here, which is just to replace the magnet. And the way that we would do that is that we'd take a flathead screwdriver, and then we would gently lever out the magnet here, being very careful not to damage the polymer magnet housing. Okay, so now let's put the sensor back together. The other point to mention is that the sensor actually needs to be aligned in a particular way. And the way it does that, so you might not be able to see, but there's a groove along the sensor here, and there's also a grub screw. There's also a grub screw in here, and the grub screw is adjusted in this little grub screw area there. So first of all, check that it's coming in correctly. So you want to put it in, and then you want to slot it into the grub screw. Now, whilst you're cleaning it, you may have moved the grub screw, in which case you need to take the 1mm Allen key, and you just need to tighten up the 1mm Allen key just enough for it to protrude in the inside of the housing, so it can notch into the sensor groove here. Okay, and then I'm going to reapply the retaining nut on the back. And now I'm going to reattach the magnet head. Now it's important that the two dots on the magnet head are aligned, so you don't want it like that, and you don't want it like that, and you want it like that. Alright? So take your 2mm Allen key, place it into the grub screw, and tighten. And don't tighten too much. So tighten until you have a positive contact with the housing, but don't tighten it any more than that, or else you'll compress the inner housing and the sensor won't move freely. So once you put it back together, just make sure that the spring mechanism is moving freely. And then after you've completed this test, after you've completed the service, redo a dip test in which you dip the sensor in the water with the Portalevel, just to make sure that you haven't damaged the actual sensor in the process of servicing. Alright, well, thank you very much, and if you have any questions, you know where to send it to support@Coltraco, and we'll help you out. Thank you very much.